Kansas City.
A police officer has been stabbed at 9th and Grand. Police confirmed to Channel 5 that the officer was stabbed in that area around 6 o'clock. Where the officer was stabbed is not by the groups that are forming for the Unity March. At this point, we don't know anything about a suspect or the officer's condition, but we will update you as soon as we learn more.
All right, let's take a live look at that scene right now. You can see obviously a very heavy police presence right there. They've put crime tape up around the area. Police now doing their initial investigation of what happened. Again, as to what Ellen said, we don't know anything about a suspect or that officer's condition, but we'll be closely following this throughout the evening. Okay, now we want to go back to those protests on the Plaza and the Unity March, which is set to take place at any minute.
Yeah, and this walk will start south on Oak Street, then it will turn on Emmanuel Cleaver Boulevard, head toward Mill Creek Park. Yeah, let's go to the beginning now here of this route where our Greg Payne is standing by. Greg, we've seen people gathering the last few minutes. What can you tell us from your vantage point?
Yeah, what I'm seeing right now is a large number of people ready to get this march started. I mean, take a look. As you can see, a lot of people getting ready as the march is supposed to start at 6:30 here. As you can see, many signs around, many people trying to spread that message. Now, one thing, I wanted to talk with a gentleman that decided to come on out. He might be a familiar face to many. He's Pastor Hamilton of the Church of the Resurrection. I'm going to grab him real quick. Pastor, thank you for joining us. I mean, first off, why did you decide to come on out?
Yeah, well, first of all, we wanted to say, I and the congregation want to say that we stand with the African American community in Kansas City, and we are, we want to see change, and to say that we want to bring our community together. I think this event is about trying to say, okay, we know change has to happen. We have to listen, we have to learn, and then we got to make those changes, and we got to bring our community back together again. And so all of that's a part of what's happening. I was here on the Plaza last night with the march and walk, and to say, look, we're standing with you and speaking up, and here was a chance to try to bring the community together. And I'm really glad that both groups, the march and the counter protest, are actually here together right now conversing. I think it's a pretty powerful thing. And actually, we're all really on the same side. We're all really pushing for change, grace, justice to happen in our community, and for our community to come together.
And now let me ask you, because I mean, there are probably a lot of spiritual leaders that are here. I mean, why is it so important that the spiritual leaders come out and, make sure that they're showing and spreading their message and,
right,
letting their voice be heard?
Well, my friend Rabbi Art Nemetoff is here. There's a lot of religious leaders who are here. And I think we're saying, first of all, what's happened and what happened to George Floyd and what happens all too frequently in our country is not okay. That has to change. And it has to change. There's a deeper issue. It's not just police. It's a deeper issue in all of us. And so we got to address that. And then we've got to say, now we're going to stand, we're going to stand together. We're going to speak up, stand together. We're going to love each other, and we're going to see change happen. And so I think religious leaders want that to happen. We care about that, and we want to lead our flocks to help make that happen. And I think without the religious community doing their work, a lot of the things we want to see happen will not change. So, yep.
Pastor, I appreciate that a lot. Enjoy the walk. Ellen and Brad, I just want to give you guys another live look right here as folks are about to get ready to take off. As you can see, as I was mentioning, signs ready. People are ready to enjoy that march. So we're going to send that on back to you, Ellen and Brad.
All right, Greg, thank you. And we will check in with you a little bit later as that does get started.
Yeah, it looks like more people are beginning to show up for this Unity March. Let's get the very latest now from our Betsy Webster, who's also there in a little bit different area. Betsy, tell us what's happening where you are right now.
Yeah, we're at Cleaver 2 and Oak, and this is really interesting, actually. There's been talk about a counter-protest, and there's really some difficulties with the use of that language, but what we have is we have a group that has been at the park for day after day after day, and they are, let me step out of the way so you can see some of what's happening while I'm talking about this. So they've been at the park day after day, and then they find out about this Unity March. And they felt like, this march was organized by leaders of the clergy. It was going to involve the police, involve the mayor, involve the city council leaders. And they felt like, that was a top-down march. And he wanted one that was bottom-up, more of a grassroots effort. And he doesn't want the voices of those who were part of these rallies day after day after day to be lost in this Unity March. One of the things he said is that kumbaya, there's no time, it's too late for kumbaya. But what is interesting is even though this was going to be two separate groups, the leader of that march and the leader of the Unity March spent a little time talking to each other. And I heard them. He said, look, we want to be part of this, but we want to lead it. And the man who was in charge working in the Unity March, he said, that's fine. And there was some discussion about how we can work together, but we just don't want to be subsumed or put in the back seat for all of this. Now, the mayor is speaking right now to the group. The police chief is there with him. Bishop Tony Caldwell, who was the impetus behind this, he has been there to speak. We were down at the park earlier when folks were gathered before they walked up here, and one of the organizers of the Unity March came and said to people, join us, not them. But now that they're all here in one place, it seems that us-them perspective has really tempered into, well, unity. But sorry, I've been asked to settle down because people want to listen to the mayor. So back to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Betsy. Let's listen into what the Mayor Quinton Lucas is speaking here. Let's focus on what he's saying right now.
Safely and freely, because this protest is not about just what's happening in a park or on a street. It's about somebody who lives in the community right now and somebody who's living in fear each day. When we talk about de-escalation, it's not just about de-escalating a protest. It's about de-escalating every experience and interaction that so many of our communities, particularly our black brothers and sisters, are terrified of each day. So I want to say thank you. So I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you to the Police Foundation, the chief, $2.5 million for body cameras. That is big, but it's only a step. And we got a lot more left. Thank you so much. No justice. No peace. 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 No justice. No peace.
So you were just hearing from Mayor Quinton Lucas and the folks who have gathered here to protest. This is not just about George Floyd. This is about so many other issues, police brutality, ending systemic racism. That is why folks have gathered here, and they are going to be marching together, as Betsy Webster just talked about. And she said, you know, counter-protest, unity march, folks are coming together, and that's the point of this. It is to have these difficult discussions, which a lot of people are having right now, frankly.
Yeah, well, and I really loved what Betsy said, in that two groups that had kind of been apart from each other as this started now seem to be coming to some sort of unity, and it is a unity march. Yeah. Very apropos. Okay, we want to get out to Abigail James, where she is live in the midst of all of this right now. Abigail, tell us where you are and what's happening.
Yeah, Brad, hey, we're out here downtown. We're at Grand and 10th Street, and right now this entire block is blocked off. There was a KCPD officer that was out here responding to a call. He was stabbed, and he is in critical condition. We don't have too many details. We were told that this was not protest related. Like I said, this whole street right here is closed down. The PIO for the KCPD, for the police department, did arrive on scene here not too long ago, and he did go down there to get some more details for us. And I actually, right before I started talking, I did click off a phone call as he tried to call me. So I'm sure I'll be able to get some more details from him here very shortly. But again, a KCPD officer was stabbed down here at 9th and Grand downtown. We're told it was not protest related. I'll send it right back to you guys in studio.
All right, Abigail, thank you very much. And again, that officer is in critical condition right now. And then to reiterate what Abigail said, because a lot of people, when we first heard about this incident happening, the first thought was, is this related to any of the protesting? And initial reports are this is not related to that. It's not even in the same area. It's right many blocks away from where the protest and the Unity March is taking place.
Much farther north. Hey, that Unity March is just starting, and we do have some live video here. This is Chief Rick Smith. He's at the front of the pack, and frankly, he's under fire right now because a number of groups are asking for his resignation. They want him to resign. He said he will address that after the march, but he has showed up, and he's talking with community members, and you can see that he is there. And our crews are also there as well. They're in the middle of it, and yelling again, no justice, no peace. So this group right here that we are following, they are at Southmoreland Park, and they are going to be moving south and then head west on Emmanuel Cleaver. So we're going to continue to follow this. We are going to watch it. Let's let this listen in for a moment. Okay, so Mayor Quinton Lucas, we just heard from him a few moments ago. He's also there, but he is with a crowd that's a little bit closer to the Plaza. And so we are kind of waiting for these groups to get together.
All right, that's our Emily Rittman right there. She's with the walkers. Emily, this is extremely peaceful.
Right now, Brad and Ellen, we are walking with Randy Feeke. He is a reverend here in Kansas City. And Reverend, tell us again, what have you seen here as far as turnout, and what is the message you want to share with the community?
This is an incredible turnout. What we are witnessing right now in Kansas City is hearts and minds coming together for peace, for justice, for change. And this is what it's all about, coming together in unity and creating conversations that are difficult but must be had. We must create courageous conversations, make bridges along the banks, and come together and have one voice, knowing exactly what we're after, knowing exactly what our demands are, but coming together as a community, for a community, along a community.
And you said you've been here for several days. And what did you notice about the last few days that you're seeing different tonight as far as coming together?
It is amazing what happens when faith leaders, attorneys, political activists, community activists, chair people, city councilmen, when they come together and they're willing to listen, but that they're also willing to be held accountable. And what the people have been asking for is to be heard and to be seen. And in the last 3 days, I have seen the community and also the community leaders show up and listen, not talk at people, but talk with people. And that's why we're here. That's how change occurs.
I want to thank you for your time. I want to allow you to catch back up with those other faith leaders. Thank you, Randy. And guys, we're going to continue our team coverage for you, but for now, I will go ahead and send it back to you there in the studio.
All right, Emily, thank you very much. I thought it was really interesting what he had to say. This is all about having courageous conversation and building bridges on the banks, and that's what's happening there right now. Is we're seeing people who may not have always agreed with one another, but at least they're out there talking with one another and opening dialogue. And I believe that's what the organizers of this event was very hopeful that it would take place.
Yeah, and you wonder too, and Randy's been out there, the Reverend, for a number of different days. You wonder too, because he has seen it firsthand, what his thoughts, what other people's thoughts are about the police showing up. We've seen the chief, we've seen some other officers taking pictures, we've seen a few kneel. What's their perspective on that? Is it a photo op? Is this just kind of a temporary thing that we're just going to see for the next couple of days and then there will be no change? I mean, the point of this is to have, in fact, change. So that's something that we'll have to talk with some of the protesters out there today. Just kind of what are their thoughts about police coming out for a march like this? Is it a photo op, or do they feel like they are in fact listening? And from what we heard from the Reverend, he feels like people are listening. And just be quiet, listen to people's perspectives and learn from them. I think that is something that we're hearing from more and more and more from groups, from folks who are in this crowd. Listen and understand what other people are going through, and you don't know what someone's going through until you walk in their shoes, right? That's something that we've learned at a very young age, and something that we can continue to learn from, but not something that happens on a daily basis, unfortunately.
Well, change doesn't begin without conversation, and so this is hopefully a beginning of something that can be relevant and can happen in our community. And to your point, Ellen, there have been many, just in the last couple of days, there have been entire police departments who have been kneeling and showing their support with people with Black Lives Matter and protesters, and saying, we're not against you. Now, so we'll see what happens, and we'll see what happens at the end of this march. And everyone has been hoping that there is a peaceful conclusion to this march. We will see. We'll be here throughout the duration of this Unity March as people from all over our community and from surrounding communities have come down here to make a difference, or to try to make a difference in their community, or at the very least to make a stand, to take a stand.
So the march, as it continues here, they're heading towards Mill Creek Park, and then there will be a news conference following that, and we will continue to follow this as the group continues to move. We do have an update on the officer who was stabbed. We are told that they are in stable condition now. So at first we got word that they were in critical condition, and again, we want to make this clear. This is not related to the protest whatsoever, just that an officer was stabbed at 9th and Grand, away from the protest, much farther north than the Unity March, where we are covering that. But we have learned that the officer is in stable condition, so there is some good news in all of that. But
and we still don't know anything about how this started, how it transpired. We don't know that yet. But that's what we've got reporters on the scene. They're asking questions, and we'll figure out what happened here. But going back to the Unity March, it looked like when we first started kind of checking the size and scope of the crowd, it didn't look like there were, that big of a crowd, but it is really growing. I think there were a lot of, because of the heat, I think there were a lot of late arrivers. And as you can see now, I mean, this is a good sized crowd that is making a statement in their community. If we can go back to the Unity March.
Yeah, let's go to the Unity
right
March,
now.
guys. Get
there
off
we go.
of that
Thank
video.
You. And so this is what's happening right now in our community tonight. People have come down to this area to take a stand and to come together as a community. There's Mayor Quinton Lucas, who's been in the middle of all this throughout these last 5-6 days of this happening in our community. He's going to speak to the crowd right now. There's other speakers there, so let's take a moment and just kind of let this breathe of what's happening here.
So you were just hearing the crowd yelling, "Fire Chief Smith, fire Chief Smith." And there are more calls to fire Chief Rick Smith. Now, yesterday we heard from the mayor, and the mayor said that he has full confidence in the police chief. And we are expecting to hear from the police chief a little bit later to hear his response to these new calls. This is nothing new. We've heard these calls a few months ago, though, especially in the case of Breonna Hill, who was killed, died in police custody, and it was filmed. And when that happened, there were calls for the police chief to resign, and they have resurfaced a few months later. So that's why, you're hearing that. Fire Chief Smith, fire Chief Smith. We are going to get a response from the chief. But as I told you, we heard from Mayor Lucas just last night saying that he has confidence in the chief.
One of the other things that he said that I think is important to kind of put this into context is he said, I think there's a lot of people right now who would like to see me, Mayor Quinton Lucas, gone, and Chief Smith. He said, this has not been a perfect process. The protests haven't been perfect, and the response to the protests have not been perfect. But he said, and I think this is important to note, he said, if you compare what's been happening in Kansas City to other cities of similar size and larger, he said, we haven't had nearly the number of problems and arrests and violence that has been seen in other cities. So he said, we must be doing something right. So that's what Mayor Quinton Lucas had to say yesterday. We'll hear what he has to say. We have a reporter that's on their way right now to talk with Chief Smith. We'll be getting his reaction to all of this. We'll also be trying to track down Mayor Quinton Lucas to talk about this as well, because we have not heard him yet today on this issue. And we will be asking him those questions as this goes on. It's hot out there, folks. It's really hot and humid out there. And these people are walking on pavement, so it's even hotter. It's humid, but they're making their voices known. They're making their voices heard. And if this is about effecting change, this is how it starts.
It sure does. And besides Firing Chief Smith, locally, protesters are also wanting body cameras to be worn by the KCPD and also local control of the police department. Those are some of the demands that we've been hearing lately. I don't know if we can go back to Emily Rittman or not, but she was speaking with folks who were marching, and it certainly was compelling. And so we're going to check in with her a little bit later to hear from folks who are in that crowd, because that's what we need to hear from. That's who we need to hear from. So hopefully we can check back in with Emily and get that as well. But yeah, I mean, the crowd, this is, there are hundreds and hundreds of people here gathered on this hot afternoon calling for change, and everything has gone well, and even though there might be different groups who are talking about different things, it looks like they are coming together.
And I see people let's take a look at the faces in the crowd. They're all different. They all look different. And again, you're not going to, as to what Pastor Adam Hamilton of Church of the Resurrection told our reporter earlier in this newscast. He said this change doesn't happen unless the entire community comes together to effect change. Okay, we want to get back out to Emily Rittman. We've been talking about going back out to her. There she is right now. Emily, go ahead.
Well, Brad, I can tell you that right now a lot of attention is focused on the chants and the speaking that's coming from underneath these tents. And these tents are probably very much welcomed by this crowd because, as Ellen mentioned, it is extremely hot out here today. And with COVID-19 still in our community, people are wearing their masks, which makes it even more difficult to march and breathe easily, but people are doing so. We've seen community members hand out masks to anyone that maybe didn't have one. But we also spoke with a Reverend live just moments ago who said that for much of this weekend and this week, that he really saw police on one side of a street and then protesters on the other side of the street. And that today in that park, he was able to see them right by each other, and able to have a conversation, even have a handshake. And for him, that was a big change, a big significant change. And the Reverend we spoke to, Randy Fiki, actually has the bullhorn right now and is speaking to this crowd. But I can tell you, we also spoke to several people who said that they wanted to be a part of the Unity March, but they also will continue to protest on their own. And they said one thing that is very important to them is that they want to sit down with the prosecutor. They want to sit down with the Jackson County Sheriff. They want to sit down with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Chief. And they say they're going to continue to ask for that until it happens. That they want to have important conversations, and that they want those conversations to lead to some sort of change, some sort of action. But as I talk to you about just how hot it is out here, I'm going to take just a moment to get a little bit of a breath underneath this, maybe a little bit of water. But we are going to be giving you team coverage throughout the evening. But for now, I will go ahead and send it back to you.
All right, Emily, thank you. Yeah, the mask is going to make it very difficult for folks to breathe out there, especially if they are walking a long distance. So, yes, Emily, thank you. Let's listen in here.
Loss of employment and benefits. We want to discuss that. Yes! I'm going to tell you what that means to me so you'll understand. When I go into meetings with them, I'm going to tell them I don't want cops off with pay. I don't want you off with pay. I don't want you on administrative leave with pay. We do not want you on administrative leave with pay. We want you to be on administrative leave without pay. And once we know, listen, no, hold on. The mayor said a great thing, and the police chief said a great thing. But what they said doesn't solve the problem. And I'll tell you what the problem is. Body cameras mean nothing.
Okay, we continue to listen on what people are saying at this Unity March. And this started just about 20 minutes ago, and the crowd continues to get bigger and bigger. As Emily Rittman was telling us, it is just plain hot and humid out there. It's difficult to be out there, but there they are in mass. And, one of the other things that we've noticed over the last couple of nights is that the protests have been, there's been a de-escalation on both sides. On the police side, the police said, we've listened to I saw them tweet today, the Kansas City Police Department tweeted, we've been listening to your concerns, and we have been addressing and changing the way that we handle crowd sizes at these protests. In the last two nights, have ended with fewer arrests, which is great news, and there hasn't been a lot of unrest. People have listened to one another on both sides, and so we hope that continues tonight.
Yeah, tear gas, right? I mean, that's something you don't want to see or experience. All right, let's go now to Abigail James, who's live with the police spokesperson about what happened to their officer who was stabbed.
In the chest. So the officer was wearing his vest, and it was just right above the vest line there, kind of in a downward motion. So obviously that's a very big health concern. Officers quickly arrived at the scene. The original officer was able to keep the man here and subdued until officers got here, and they were able to get him into custody. So he is in custody tonight for aggravated assault. The officer was taken to the hospital. It was initially believed to be critical condition. That was the initial report. I've just gotten information in the last couple minutes that he's been upgraded to stable condition, so that's good news.
And again, recap, the man that the officer encountered here was in some sort of mental health crisis, right?
That's initially what it appears to be the case, yeah, based on what the officer reported and what he told officers that were coming over here. The initial indication was the man was very highly agitated, and they believed appeared to be experiencing some sort of mental health issue. One more thing, there's no indication this is related to any protest activity that's going on throughout the city. That's a question I've gotten a lot.
So many people were, when they heard about this, that was the first thing that, came to their mind if this was protest.
Exactly. We were very curious about it too. Obviously, we're gearing up for protests near the Plaza, but we're on alert and we're ready for any issues that pop up anywhere across the city. And so that was one of the first questions that we all had as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, you just heard from the police spokesperson talking about the officer. They are going to be okay, and it is not protest related. Let's go back to the protests happening right now because we only have a few more minutes with you here on air with our coverage. And Mayor Quinton Lucas talking right now.
So tomorrow morning, I will pledge to you, we will talk about local control. We will talk about body cameras, and we will talk about making sure we got more accountability. We want results. 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 I can't stop it myself, but I already talked. What's that?
Hey, we want action. We've been talking all week. The people want this. I don't know why it's so hard for elected officials to hear the people. We've been protesting every single day. We've been out here. And I've been putting this on with Henley and all the people. I'm 21.
All right, we want to thank you for watching
And the fact
our
that people
coverage of the Unity March. As you can see, it's still going on. We'll have the very latest tonight at 10 o'clock on KCTV5.
And we will continue streaming our coverage right now on our Facebook page. Go there, and again, we'll see you right back here at 10.